Okay, I wanted to record a little video that sort of covers stuff that I may have covered in the in-person lecture this week, week 7, that I failed to record. So it goes along sort of as a complement to the lecture that I did post that I recorded last semester. In addition, there was a couple bugs in the search functionality, and I fixed them. So even if you did view the lecture in person or synchronously online last Tuesday, take a look at this because it talks about the fixes I did to the search functionality. What the purpose of today's lecture is to go over and to examine the code that we get by scaffolding. I mean, scaffolding is a wonderful thing. It saves us a lot of work, but it's going to be very rare that we're going to be able to use things exactly as they're scaffolded. We're going to need to make changes, and in order to make changes, we have to really understand what's going on. So we're going to look at the add, create, or the create, the delete, the edit, the details, and we're going to take another look at the index, which serves as a listing of the movies table. So when I run this, when I click add, or create new rather, I can type in a movie. And there it gets added. Let's look at the add page and the way that works. So on the add page, we have, as with all our Razor pages, the Razor page itself, which is the GUI, and we have the model, which is the C# file that goes along with it. Let's start by looking at the Razor page itself. The Razor page itself is pretty much a standard HTML page with a couple of additional attributes on some of our tags that are used to sort of tie the code in our page to the code in our model. Specifically, this ASP4. This ASP4 says that this text box, this label is associated with this text box, and this text box is related to our movie object, the title attribute, the movie object, the release date, the movie object, the genre, the movie object, and the price. We have this validation code that happens, and when we press submit, the page gets posted to. Notice the method of the form is on post. So notice that there is no onGet method here. Oh, there is, but it's very minimal. It simply returns the page, and the page will start off with these fields being blank. Those fields are tied to this object that we have in our model, public movie. So of type movie, and the name of the variable is called movie. We have bind property here. What that means is that's what links together the stuff that we put in there goes into this object's different properties. So when we say movie.title, that's this movie object's title property. It gets set. Now on post, what happens is we first check to see if the model is valid or not. That is, if there's any validation errors. And if there is, we simply return the page. Otherwise, we add to context.movie. Now what that is the movie entity in our database context. All right. And that ties to or links to the movie table in our relational database. So we say add, that's sort of adding it to that list of movies that exist in our context. And then we save those changes, and that will actually make the changes final and actually add to the database. And when we're done, we redirect back to the index page. So that's why after we successfully enter a new movie, we go to the index page. Now notice that when you create this, you start with a blank movie. That's not going to be the case in delete, edit, and details. Let's look at details first. With details, we have a very similar thing. This is sort of a mix between what we had in the index before, where we pull the titles from the different things, and the display values for in the model, the movie object, the genre, and so on. Title, release date, genre, movie. So we have the display name for and the display of the actual field. So this displays the title of the field, the name of the field, displays the actual value. Now, where does that come from? That comes from the details model. And if we look at that, we have code in here. In order to display the details, we have to pass an ID. So for example, here, if you notice, each one of these movies has a details link on it. If I call the details page, I have to say what movie I want. So in this case, if you look down in the navigation over here, when we hover over this, it says details ID equals 1. So we're passing in the ID field on the query string a value of 1 and a value of 2, 3, 6, 7. That's important because we're going to use that ID to pull the one and only movie that we're interested in. So when we click details, that gets passed, and we call and retrieve the data just for that one movie. So we check to see if there's no ID or if there are no movies. And if there's no ID or no movies, we return that the data is not found. Otherwise, we call this context movie. Again, context movie, what is that? That is in the movie entity, which is tied to the database. Give us the first or default value. Now we know that there's going to be one at least because there's one value for primary key. And we do that for a movie where the movie ID is equal to the ID that was passed on the query string. If we look up here, the get includes an optional ID, which means that it's going to take the ID from the query string and compare it to the ID in the movie table and pull us the one movie that matches that. If there's if none are retrieved, we get this not found. Otherwise, movie equals movie. What that means is this one movie that we retrieve here, we put that value into this movie object here, which means it's available then on the Razor page through this syntax. In the model, the movie object, give me the title and give me the display name for it. Give me the actual value for the title in the movie object, and so on. Now, update and delete work similarly because both of those require an ID. So the retrieve is going to be the same. What's going to be different is when we click post. For example, edit is sort of a combination of the details page and the add. The Razor page has these different labels and different inputs, and we use the ASP4 to tie that to the movie object in the model. with bind properties. We did that in the add as well. What that means is that the stuff we enter here in the razor page gets put in this movie's property, this movie object's property. And when we click post, we make sure that the data is valid. We do a couple things, and then we try to save the changes there. There's a couple of validation to make sure that if that movie doesn't exist with that movie ID. So if we try to update a movie that wasn't there, which, in normal operation should not happen. Similarly, the delete does about the same, except the action is when you click the post and go to that, we try to delete. We find the movie that has that ID. If that movie is present, we grab it, remove it, and update the database. Next thing I want to look at is the search, because I did change that a little bit. So let's look at the indexes razor page and the indexes model. First of all, if we run this, let's observe the behavior. If we run this and go to here, first thing it does is it shows us all the movies. That is an on get, because we have not yet posted to this page. So the method is get, and therefore we do that. If we put in something to search, we put in, let's say, $14. Let's make it $10. Whoa. He must be sticking. $10. It'll give us everything less than or equal to, or it will give us everything greater than or equal to. Those are when the form is submitted. And we're using a post method, so this is the on post event. So note the difference between these two things when we post to the field versus we access the page for the first time. The index doesn't get changed much, the razor page, other than having us form to do the entry of the fields that we want to search by. The rest of it stays the same, so the discussion that we had in week 6 would apply. The model, though, is different because we have an on get that simply retrieves all the movies. We get from the context movie, that is from the entity model that contains all the movies, which maps to the database movie table. We get all the movies from there and we want to select them. Then we take that and we create a list, which is called movie. This is just as we did before. What's different, though, is when we post. When we post, we initialize an error message. We put a try catch in here. And we look to see if there's anything in the search field. If there's nothing in the search, if there's nothing in the search field, we look to see if the type is less than or equal, and then use that to either look for where the price is less than or equal to the search string, or when the price is greater than or equal to the search string. However, we do a decimal parse because the search string is a string, and to do this comparison, we have to change it to convert it to a number. Now, if that conversion doesn't go well, so for example, if we entered a string in there, it's going to throw an exception. And what we do is we simply retrieve all the movies and display them, and display an error message saying that's an invalid entry. That error message was put on the Razor page. So we go in here. If we type something in that there's nothing less than or equal to $1 and submit, we get nothing. If we type in something that's alphabetic, we're going to throw that exception when we go to convert that to a decimal, and therefore it's going to return all the movies with an error message, invalid entry. Otherwise, it should do as we wanted it to do. Please review this video and review the example, or go in, try to recreate this example would be a good exercise. Week 8, as I posted to Canvas, is going to be sort of a catch-up week. So I want to hear from all of you. In fact, it's an assignment to hear from all of you about where you're at and what you need help with, and so on, because there are some people that are behind, and I want to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, and we want to stay caught up. All right. I guess there's no questions because no one is watching this but me. So we'll talk to you later.